I don't usually notice the small things. The color of her shoes, the way she parts her hair, which necklace she pairs with what outfit, those kinds of details never stuck with me. Clara always had an effortless style, and I let her exist in that ace without scrutiny. But that evening something was off. And this time I noticed. She came downstairs in her red dress. Not just any dress, this one was memorable. Form-fitting, silk, deep crimson with a scalloped hem and a plunging back. She bought it for our anniversary dinner last year and hadn't worn it since. That night it had meant something, she wore it for me. Tonight I wasn't even sure she remembered I was in the room. I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my coffee as she fussed with her earrings by the mirror. The light from the hallway bounced off the satin of her dress, and I noticed it, right near the third button, a lipstick smear. Plum. Not one of hers. Clara only wore neutrals, soft pinks, beige, occasionally coral. This one was dark, bold, and definitely not accidental. I watched as she dabbed her wrist with perfume. But it wasn't hers, not the familiar vanilla rose blend she's used for years. This scent was heavier, more layered. Woodsy. Spiced. Something distinctly not hers and not mine either. She caught me watching her in the mirror and gave me a flat smile. Going out with the girls, she said, voice casual, detached. Don't wait up. I nodded slowly, unsure what to say. There was a time she would have told me more, where they were going, who was joining, what time she'd be back. Not tonight. No follow-up. No question about my plans. She didn't even ask me if I wanted dinner. But I noticed one more thing. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Not a huge deal, not by itself. Clara's always been forgetful about jewelry, left rings by the sink, earrings on nightstands. Still, paired with everything else, the absence screamed louder than a confession. She grabbed her purse, adjusted her dress slightly in the mirror, and left without a kiss. The sound of her heels tapping against the hallway tile faded into silence. I stood there for a while, just breathing, just listening to the sound of nothing. Then her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was face up and the preview flashed before I could even take a step. Unknown number, last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about it. Same time next week. My stomach dropped. I stared at the message. The words didn't seem real. I reached for the phone, hesitated, and then picked it up. My hands shook slightly, not from anger, but from something colder. Clarity. She hadn't even bothered to change the notification settings or hide the sender's name. No nickname. No attempt to lock her phone tonight. Was it confidence or was it carelessness? My thumb hovered over the screen. Before I could open the message, the phone vibrated again. Another one. Unknown number. You wore the dress for me, didn't you? Then, just like that, the screen went dark. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been, quietly, as if not to disturb the air. She wouldn't know I'd seen it. Not yet. I needed to sit with this. To think. Later that night, I asked casually if she got any messages while she was out. She glanced at her phone and shrugged. Just junk. Spam. I nodded and said nothing. No questions. No accusations. Just a simple, glad you're back safe. She mumbled something and headed upstairs without looking at me. And that was when I knew. It wasn't the dress. It wasn't the lipstick. It wasn't the cologne. It wasn't even the messages. It was the way her voice sounded when she lied. Cold. Flat. Like she had practiced it. And the scariest part? It didn't sound like guilt. It sounded like routine. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. I lay in bed, eyes closed, counting the rise and fall of my chest, the hum of the ceiling fan, the occasional creak of the house settling, but sleep refused to come. Instead, my mind ran laps, looping through memories that once felt innocuous, harmless. Now each one had a sharper edge. At 2:11 a.m. I gave up pretending. I got up, padded quietly down the stairs, and sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water I didn't drink. I stared out the window into the dark. And the fragments began falling into place. The new passcode on her phone. She said it was for security, her job had implemented new IT protocols. I bought that. I even laughed about how overprotective her company had become. The sudden girls' trips. Spa weekends. Reset weekends, she called them. They didn't line up with her work calendar, but she'd shown me *TS of group chats with her friends. Now I realize how easy it is to fake a group text. Then there was that time she came back from yoga in a silky blouse I hadn't seen in months. I joked about how overdressed she was for Downward Dog. She laughed, but there was something in her eyes like she wasn't present. I wrote it off as fatigue. There were receipts too. One was from a rooftop bar I'd never been to. When I asked, she said she'd gone with her team after work. But the bill had 2 entrees, a shared dessert, and a single cocktail. Not a group tab. Not the usual takeout she brought home when she was with coworkers. I remember staring at the receipt longer than I should have, not knowing why it bothered me. Even the way she touched me changed. What once was warmth had become obligatory. Her hugs grew shorter. Her kisses turned to pecks. Her hands, once so familiar with mine, became strangers. I can't remember the last time she laced her fingers with mine just because. I told myself people evolve. That routine wears on everyone. That it wasn't her, it was the years, the stress, life. I convinced myself that the way she leaned away from me on the couch wasn't about me, but about needing space. But that night, the lies began to unravel on their own. There was one weekend, late March. She claimed her friend Talia needed help with a last-minute bridal shower upstate. I offered to drive her, but she declined, said she'd be driving with the others. Her suitcase was smaller than usual, and she forgot her charger. When I called to let her know, she didn't pick up. Hours later, she texted, "So sorry. Left my phone in the car. Everything's fine." And then I remembered, later that night, I checked her iPad, the one linked to her email. An unread confirmation sat there, unopened. A luxury hotel in Windermere. Booked under her maiden name. I asked her about it the next week. She brushed it off, claimed it was a mistaken booking for a cancelled work conference. She sounded annoyed that I had checked. But what shook me wasn't just the lie. It was how smooth she was while telling it. Like she had rehearsed it. Then there was the browser history. A remote resort had been bookmarked. I had clicked out of curiosity, massages, private suites, couples packages. I never asked. I didn't want to be the jealous husband. I told myself maybe she was planning a surprise. How foolish that sounds now. The signs weren't just there, they were screaming. And I chose to muffle them because I didn't want to believe what I already knew. I let love cloud the logic. I trusted the woman I married more than I trusted my instincts. At 3:28 a.m. I pulled out an old journal. One I hadn't touched in years. I started writing, not poetry, not analysis, just memories. The good, the bad, the foggy. I needed to see it all laid out in front of me. And as I wrote, the portrait of a different Clara emerged. Not the woman I married, but the woman she had slowly become. She wasn't cruel. Not on the surface. She was methodical. Calm. Her lies weren't loud, they were quiet, like dust gathering in corners you never check until it's thick enough to notice. I remembered one night in particular. We were lying in bed. She was scrolling on her phone. I was watching a documentary. She turned to me and asked, "Do you think you're still the same person you were when we met?" I shrugged and said something vague about growth and responsibility. She didn't respond immediately. Just stared at her screen. Then she said, "Sometimes I wonder if comfort K***LLS connection." At the time, I thought it was a philosophical musing, something she'd read on social media. I nodded, murmured something about how routine doesn't mean neglect. But now I think that was a test. A breadcrumb. Maybe even a warning. She'd been drifting for a while, I realized. Drifting in a way I hadn't noticed because I thought being present physically meant being present emotionally. I was wrong. At 5 a.m. I made coffee. The smell didn't comfort me like it used to. I poured a cup and let it go cold on the counter. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a pale glow over the backyard. I didn't feel anger. Not yet. What I felt was loss. But not the kind that comes from something being taken from you. No, this was the kind of loss you feel when you realize something left long ago and you just hadn't noticed. The woman sleeping upstairs wasn't my wife. She hadn't been for a long time. The confirmation didn't come with a bang. It didn't scream in my face or shatter like glass. No, it arrived in the form of an email, quiet, clinical, and utterly damning. It was a lazy Thursday morning when it popped into the inbox of our old shared account. Clara had forgotten it still forwarded messages to me. We hadn't used it in months, maybe longer. I almost deleted the notification without checking. But something about the subject line, "Your upcoming stay at the Havencrest Hotel," froze my hand mid-tap. I opened it. The reservation was under Clara's maiden name. That was the first punch to the gut. The second was the details: a deluxe corner suite, weekend stay, champagne on arrival, dinner for two at their rooftop restaurant, and a late checkout on Sunday. The third? The date. It was for that coming weekend. A weekend she had already claimed she'd be spending recharging with the girls at a cabin. I stared at the screen, rereading every line. No typos. No ambiguity. It wasn't a work trip. It wasn't a spa weekend. It was exactly what it looked like, a romantic getaway planned with precision and intention. I didn't act immediately. I closed the email, then reopened it half an hour later, hoping I'd misread something. I hadn't. I didn't confront her. Instead, I waited. That Friday, Clara packed her things methodically as if rehearsing. She chose soft, layered clothes, a lavender cashmere sweater, that long beige coat she reserved for elegant evenings, and heels too high for a cabin retreat. She left early after a kiss on the cheek that barely grazed my skin. Her perfume lingered in the air longer than her affection did. I already had the address from the reservation. The Havencrest was a boutique hotel an hour outside the city, secluded, upscale, the kind of place meant to hide things behind polished wood and dim lighting. I arrived just before check-in, parking across the street, heart pounding so loudly I could feel it in my fingertips. I didn't go in right away. I waited, and then I saw her. She stepped out of a sleek black car, laughing at something the man beside her said. Tall, dark jacket, designer sneakers. He looked like he belonged in a catalog. She was holding his arm like it was second nature. Like this wasn't a first time, it was familiar. He leaned in and said something into her ear, and she touched his chest lightly, affectionately. They walked into the hotel lobby like a couple returning from a late lunch. Clara didn't see me right away. I stood just inside the entrance, hidden partially behind a column near the reception desk. The hotel had the kind of quiet that muffled footsteps and made every voice sound in asterisk mate. I watched as they approached the front desk. Reservation for Ellery, she said to the concierge, her voice confident, polished. The name slid off her tongue like she'd said it 100 times. Ellery. Her last name before me. Her life before me. The concierge handed over a pair of room keys. She took one. So did he. And then she turned. She saw me. Her expression didn't change all at once, it shifted in fragments. First, confusion. Then panic. Then something harder to define, defiance? Fury? Fear? She froze mid-step, clutching the room key like a shield. The man beside her noticed and looked in my direction. His brow furrowed, trying to place me. He didn't know me, but I knew enough about him. I stepped forward, slow, deliberate. My coat hung open, and in my hand a manila folder. Inside, printed emails, **TS of texts, the hotel confirmation, a photo of them entering that same boutique hotel 2 months prior, a lead I hadn't followed up on until now. Clara's face was pale, but her jaw was tight. Miles, she said, voice low. This isn't. I held up a hand. Not to stop her from talking, but to stop myself from listening. I didn't speak. Not a word. Instead, I opened the folder and handed it to her. She took it reflexively. Flipped it open. Her eyes scanned the first few pages. I saw the breath leave her body, slow and silent. Her grip tightened around the edges of the paper as if she might crush it. The man beside her looked at the documents too. He looked confused. Maybe he didn't know the extent of it. Maybe he thought he was just a fling. A secret. A name in her phone under something innocuous like Mira or Nina from book club. But now he knew. Clara looked at me again, this time with something like desperation. Please, she started, her voice fraying, let's go somewhere. No, I said. One word. That's all. The lobby was still. Even the concierge looked like he'd stopped breathing. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see her fall apart. I didn't want to see him put a hand on her shoulder or hear her scramble for excuses. I wanted the silence. I wanted the finality. I walked down the front steps of the hotel into the cold evening air, each step feeling heavier than the last, but not from grief. From closure. Back in the car, I sat for a moment before turning the key. My fingers trembled slightly. I looked down at the seat beside me. The second folder. The one I'd be sending to my lawyer. The copies. The timeline. The evidence. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about shaming her. This was about drawing a line in the sand and walking away. There was no screaming. No begging. No grand declarations. No scandalous scene. Just a woman caught in the act and a man who had finally stopped doubting what he already knew. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the streetlights blur and the highway noise fill the silence in my head. I stopped once for gas, not because I needed it, but because I needed to do something ordinary. Something that didn't involve her name echoing in my mind. Eventually, I pulled into a rest stop near the lake where Clara and I used to picnic. I stayed there until dawn, parked at the edge of the overlook, watching as the sky moved from charcoal to navy to soft gray. There was no rage in me. No need to yell, break things, or demand answers. I'd already gotten the truth, and it didn't come in words, it came in the way she held his arm, in the smile she gave him that used to be mine, in the calm, practiced way she had lied. That morning, as the sun began to stretch over the hills, I called the bank. I transferred half of our joint savings into a private account I had opened months ago but never touched, just in case. The money wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was clarity in numbers. Then I called a lawyer. I didn't want drama. I didn't want to drag her through the mud. I just wanted it over. I emailed him the evidence, photos, hotel confirmations, the messages I had printed and scanned. The lawyer responded within an hour, professional and to the point. You have enough here for a clean filing. No contest if she wants it quiet. Which, given the nature of this, she likely will. I gave him the green light. Then I drove back to the house. She wasn't home. Not yet. Her car was still gone, and so was the suitcase. I let myself in quietly like I always did, though it felt strange to think of it as our home now. Every corner had shadows, ghosts of conversations, arguments, apologies, laughter. Ghosts that I no longer felt tethered to. I walked into the kitchen and stood there for a long while, staring at the table. The one where we had dinner every Sunday. The one where she told me she wanted to grow old with me. The one where, just a few months ago, she claimed she was just tired when I asked if something was wrong. I pulled the wedding album from the top shelf in the hallway closet. I hadn't looked at it in over a year. Not since our anniversary. I wiped off the dust, opened it, and flipped slowly through the pages. There was one picture I lingered on, us holding hands on the hill behind her mother's house, the word forever scrawled in gold cursive underneath. I took it out and laid it on the kitchen table. Next to it, I placed a printed copy of the photo I'd taken outside the hotel. Clara, smiling, her arm looped through the strangers. No captions. No post-it notes. No sarcastic comments. Just truth. On top of the album, I left a note with a single instruction. Leave the house key here. Don't contact me. The lawyer will reach out. I gathered my things, not all, just enough. A suitcase, my files, a few personal items. I'd already arranged to stay with a friend out of town for a while. Someone who'd asked no questions, just said, come. Before I left, I walked into the bedroom one last time. Her side of the closet was still full, shoes lined up neatly, dresses color-coded. Her perfume bottles stood in a row like glass soldiers. The scent lingered in the room, soft and bitter. I didn't touch anything. I just stood in the doorway and looked. This was not my home anymore. It was a museum of what used to be. Of what I used to believe. By the time she returned, the silence would speak for me. No confrontation. No yelling. Just a quiet absence and a stack of irrefutable truth. When I closed the front door behind me, I didn't lock it. I didn't need to. That chapter had already closed. It was 2 weeks after I left when I found myself driving to St. Mary's. I hadn't planned to go back there, not anytime soon, at least, but there were some documents Clara had stored at her mother's house and my lawyer needed them for the divorce. I could have asked Clara to mail them. I could have avoided the visit altogether. But some part of me, quiet and persistent, needed to see where all this had come from. Not the cheating. Not the hotel. Not even the lies. I needed to understand why she had become a stranger in the body of someone I once knew. St. Mary's was small, still the same sleepy town I remembered from our early days. The same corner deli, the same broken swing in the park we once strolled through while holding hands. It was a town that hadn't changed, and maybe that was part of the problem. Clara's mother opened the door before I knocked, as if she'd been expecting me. Miles, she said with a soft nod, stepping aside. Come in. I did. The living room looked almost exactly as it had during every holiday visit, photos of Clara's childhood on the walls, floral curtains drawn halfway, the faint scent of lavender and old wood. Everything was in its place. She handed me the folder without a word, thick with legal documents, insurance records, and property agreements. I thanked her and turned to leave. But she stopped me. You probably hate her right now, she said, her voice calm, even. I wouldn't blame you. I didn't answer. She gestured for me to sit, and against my better judgment, I did. I'm not going to defend what she did, she said. But I think I can help you understand it. Not to excuse it, just to give you clarity. She took a long breath, like the kind you take before diving underwater. Clara has always needed more, she said finally. More attention, more movement, more drama. Even as a little girl, she couldn't sit still. Not physically, not emotionally. She used to stir things up just to feel alive. I thought of the nights Clara would start arguments out of nowhere. Accusations about me not listening or not caring, always followed by apologies, then silence, then passion. The cycle was always exhausting. I thought I was doing something wrong, that I wasn't meeting her needs. She told me once, her mother continued, that she loved you because you were steady, safe. But even then, she worried it wouldn't be enough. That she would unravel in stillness. She never told me that, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. No, her mother replied. She wouldn't. Clara has a gift for withholding the truth until she believes it herself. There was no bitterness in her tone, just resignation, like someone who had seen the same pattern repeat too many times to feel anything new about it. I saw this coming, she added. Not the details, but the shape of it. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you say anything? She gave me a look that was both tired and kind. Would you have listened? I didn't answer, because I knew the truth. I wouldn't have. I had loved Clara the way a man loves a story he believes in more than the facts around him. I had trusted the warmth of her smile over the coldness of her silence. I'd ignored every warning sign because I wanted her to be different. I left shortly after, the folder heavy in my hands, my chest somehow heavier. On the drive back, I played old conversations in my head like voicemails from a forgotten time. The way Clara used to ask questions that didn't feel like questions. Do you ever wonder if we got too comfortable? Don't you think people need excitement to stay in love? I had always answered with optimism, with faith. I see now how much that disappointed her. But that visit gave me something I hadn't expected. Peace. Knowing that Clara's betrayal didn't start with me, it started long before, helped me let go of the part where I thought I could have fixed it. Some people chase chaos not because they're broken, but because they don't know who they are without it. And loving them? It means getting caught in the storm, no matter how tightly you hold your umbrella.